The title tells you everything you need to know. This video is everything wrong with film theories, how Disney ruined Han Solo video. Now, with all due respect to Mad Pat, I like his videos, all of his theory channels, and even sometimes I sample the theory in some of my videos in the past. I have a tremendous amount of respect to him and all the stuff that he's done for charity work, giving away $3 million, all that. But when it comes to Star Wars, they have a history of, let's say, not doing their due diligence. And I would go as far to say I probably know more about Star Wars than the writing team, which, okay, depending on how you see it, isn't really a flex, because if I walk up to someone and say, hey, I know more about Star Wars than you, I would get eviscerated. So I'm going to say it online, which is worse because it's going to be way more people than a random person I'm going up to saying I do that. Whatever. Also, I'm at risk of being called a huge nerd. Anyways, let's break down everything wrong or incorrect about how Disney ruined Han Solo in this, let's admit it, kind of bad video.
Have you ever really thought much about Han Solo's rank in the rebellion?
General Solo?
What? General? Really? The last time the rebellion saw Han Solo before this, he was planning to bail on everyone.
I thought you had decided to stay.
Well, the bounty hunter we ran into when Lord Mendel changed my mind.
Then he gets frozen in carbonite for a year, gets forgiven, and immediately gets promoted to general? What? How does that even make any sort of sense?
Alright, this one's a quickie to begin with. It has really nothing to do with the video. But, of course he's a general. Yes, the last time the rebels saw him was at Echo Base, and when they did, he was trying to leave them. But not only did, 13 people hear that conversation, but he still rescued the princess. Not to mention, he literally helped blow up the Death Star, and he is the best pilot in the galaxy. Or is he? Throw in some of the stuff that happened in the comics between 4 and 5, and some deaths to high generals like Dodonna, and yeah, he's a general. Plus, he leads the ground crew, and even if he wasn't adequate for that job, Luke and Leia is still down there, so he was fine.
No wonder the rebellion ends up with such tactical geniuses as Vice Admiral Holdo. I wonder how long she spent in carbonite.
Last bit with the tactical genius in adding Holdo. If we take it as a joke, then fine, but come on, regardless on how you feel about the movie, she did destroy the entire fleet of First Order dreadnoughts. So yeah, absolutely, she's a good tactical genius. Also, he says rebellion, which she isn't a part of the rebellion at this time, she was part of resistance. Again, yikes, plus they used the ghost, which it's kind of a recurring asset they use in the video. Instead of using the actual ship, they used a ghost for some reason. I don't understand why.
Of movie plot points, but this theory might actually spoil Han Solo for you as a character across the Star Wars universe. But hey, you won't be alone. As a fellow Star Wars fan over here, I was as excited about a Han Solo prequel as anyone, and that was about meh, I'm kind of excited about this. But after watching it, I was left with no choice. I had to come to terms with the only conclusion you can about Han Solo. The handsome, hunky space cowboy we all once knew and had confusing feelings about is actually nothing but an overhyped poser. That's right. The quote-unquote best pilot in the galaxy is nothing but a credit-stealing lackey whose success in the entire Star Wars franchise is a complete and total farce.
Okay, he still did helping Luke destroy the Death Star. Let's take the Falcon out of the equation here. He still did destroy the shield generator on Endor. He escaped the First Order on Takodana and helped lower the shields on Starkiller Base, and integral to that mission. So even we're taking the Millennium Falcon out of the equation, Han Solo is still a very, very useful part of the team.
On with the theory! Since apparently none of you went to see Solo in theaters, I'll catch you up on this completely predictable plot of this latest movie. Young Han Solo starts the movie by escaping his crappy home planet, but oops, he leaves his girlfriend Kira, nope, not that one either, Kira behind.
Han doesn't abandon Kira, she's literally forced out of his hands and has nothing to do but join the Empire and try to get the bread to go pick her up again. That was the point of that scene. He couldn't have gone back, or either Moloch or the Imperials were going to get Han. So best case scenario, leave, excel, get some money, come back, get her.
Goes to the Imperial service, but as snooty highbrow thief, he finds the work distasteful.
Well, he finds it distasteful. It's more accurate to say he tried to feed him to a monster, and he escaped the monster, and both him and Chewbacca joined the crew that tried to feed him to the monster, who were actually smugglers. So you could just said a more condensed version of that. or literally just say that.
All sounds like yet another fun and wacky Star Wars adventure. So why am I going so hard on Han? Well, this movie is supposed to establish to us why Han has such an amazing reputation as a pilot and a smuggler by the time we reach the original Star Wars trilogy. But if you actually look at the movie, then go back and even look at episodes 4 through 6 of the original trilogy, you can see that Han actually sucks at all those things. Roll the tape. Everything starts when you see him at the opening of Solo, where, by the way, he's not a pilot yet and doesn't have experience flying anything but some measly hovercraft. They make that very clear in the opening moments. And the early scenes of the movie show that he's not even good at handling those hovercraft. The only thing we know he does successfully is hotwire a hover car, which means that he's skilled enough to have watched about 2 YouTube videos on how to hotwire something. Yeah.
Well, in the marketing, it never really says, come to see this movie to see how Han Solo becomes this great pilot, because we don't ever see him become a pilot, really. We see him learn to kind of become a pilot, but we already know that he knows how to operate a speeder. He's not good at hard maneuvers, but he's still mediocre to good because he talks about his buddy that did the tricks, implying that he is pretty good with flying.
Once we see him steal a vehicle, he cruises away in a classic Star Wars-style chase scene, and this becomes the first moment where we see his great piloting skills put to the test. He goes in for the classic thread-the-needle maneuver he would later be known for, and completely fails. He biffs it, he crashes, the ship is ruined.
Alright, come on, this is a complete and way overstatement. I have dyslexia, and there's no way I'm about to do pixel measurements to prove my point, but you're the smart one. This is a complete fail. This is like by what, 3 feet at most? He doesn't miss it by much.
But okay, I hear you saying it already. This movie is to show him growing. He can't start off being amazing at everything. The Karate Kid doesn't wax off perfectly his first time either. And I hear you. I understand that. I went into this movie expecting that. But what if I told you that Han never learns to fly? That this level of piloting ineptitude is where Han starts and where he stays for all the rest of his time alive. Don't believe me? Let's keep going. After we establish that Han sucks at flying at the beginning of the movie, we watch him continue to suck the next time he gets a chance behind the wheel. Or, I guess planes don't have wheels, so
Planes? Since when planes been in Star Wars?
the next time he takes the stick? That doesn't sound right either. We gotta really come up with some better piloting metaphors. Anyway, we see Han join the Imperial Army expecting to learn to fly, but we then fast forward 3 years and he's a boots-on-the-ground grunt. He's not a pilot. He was expelled from flight school.
I was kicked out of the flight academy.
We never actually get a sense of how much training he receives, but based on what we see next, it couldn't have been much.
Well, retroactively in a book, it's about 8 months to a year.
The next time we see Han fly is with his smuggler friend Beckett.
I'm putting together a crew. You in?
Which, if you've seen the movie, can't really be called a success. While trying to steal hyperfuel from a train, they're attacked by some marauders on flying motorcycles. Their getaway driver is shot and killed, leaving Han in the pilot's seat. And what's our ace flyer to do? He literally runs into the side of a mountain. With 2 or 3 motorcycle riders to his left, he doesn't think to, I don't know, turn right?
You're the math guy. Do the calculations on trying to move the ship from one side to the other with wind and also a speeding train plus more jumper cables on the other side, and the rest is really hard to do. As well as the pilot who's supposed to do this is dying, so Han Solo takes the wheel mid-flight, and Rio Durant, the co-pilot that I just mentioned, mentions that
You're a hell of a pilot.
Plus, Enfys Nest did break the cables, and Val was completely surrounded and committed. Basically, the odds were heavily set against him. But as the line goes, never tell me the odds, they were still successful in carrying the train off. But because Carly Morgenthau, Enfys Nest, broke the cords, they were uneven and the boarders had more leverage. He literally could not turn without losing the coaxium, and if he didn't let go of the coaxium, he would have smashed right into that mountain. Beckett calls him a coward, but we have to give him a pass. This is basically impossible to do in any scenario.
Right? And instead runs himself headlong into the mountain, dropping the hyperfuel, leaving the mission a complete disaster with 2 people dead and literally nothing to show for it. Goodbye mission, goodbye smuggler money, and thanks a lot, Han Solo.
The dead people were not his fault. It was really Beckett's plan. He kind of just joined. I can't really give Han Solo more of that than I can give Chewbacca.
Alright, we're 45 minutes into the movie at this point, and there is still no learning curve on Han's piloting abilities. Han hasn't learned anything about being a pilot.
Again, let's bring up this line.
You're a hell of a pilot.
In fact, his piloting is just more deadly and more costly than it ever has been. But I know you Star Wars fans are really persistent, and you're still making arguments here that none of these early scenes matter because by the end of the movie, Han is an amazing pilot. He's your man crush Monday, and there's nothing I can say to change your mind. Well, let's just look at that supposedly amazing Kessel Run from the end of the movie, and in the meantime, prepare for your man crush to be totally crushed, man. Let's look at how the Kessel Run goes down. In typical Han style, he promises that he can retrieve raw, completely unstable hyperfuel from Kessel, which is a planet that just so happens to be a hop, skip, and a jump through a maelstrom that's unnavigable for most pilots. But not for ol' Han, or should I say not for Lando and L337. And here's where Han's piloting really starts to unravel. Let's talk about L337, the robo-justice warrior whose name alone is just pure cringe since it's a bunch of movie execs trying to be cool by naming their robot in leet speak.
Call her cringe all you want to, but she's also one of the most liked characters in this movie, period. And people still bring her up to this day. Like, she's not hated or this SUJ nonsense anymore. Plus, her name was an Easter egg. It wasn't really the execs trying to be hip. It's literally a joke.
According to Lando, one of the reasons L3 is so advanced and eccentric is the fact that she hasn't had her memory wiped in years. The advantage this gives her is that now she has a vast navigational record that serves as the most detailed and nuanced map in the galaxy. Such incredible records not only allow L3 to travel efficiently, but also let her to make maneuvers through dangerous, poorly charted areas like asteroid fields, or in the case of our Kessel Run, the Maelstrom. She's in charge of overseeing the navigation of the Millennium Falcon safely through the Maelstrom on the way to Kessel, which she does without even flexing.
Well, she went through the other side, the same way that they went through on Rebels. The time was the constraint. It wasn't the ability to get in and out. Like, if that was just a problem, and fly out the exact same way they fly in. Also, I haven't checked the facts on this, but if you look at the hyper map, I might do that just to make sure when I'm editing this. It would have took 2 to 3 extra jumps to get to the point they were trying to get to instead of a short one. So there was a high, really, really high chance that they would have became one with the Force with Tupac if they would have went the other way instead of coming close to it still. Both sides were like bad, but like they took the lesser of two evils.
But then on Kessel, something unexpected happens. Namely, everyone on board becomes a social justice warrior too.
I'm glad Matt Pat changed his style because I can't go 20-minute rant on what he just said. But I won't, because who has the time for that? Well, I do, but I'm also lazy, so I won't.
While on Kessel, L337 tries to free her fellow robots from an eternity of servitude, but gets shot in the process. Just when she's about to go offline permanently, Lando uploads her data into the Millennium Falcon to save her AI and bolster the ship's navigational abilities, in the process linking her consciousness with the ship forever. And this is the linchpin in exposing Han Solo's lies. We now have a droid's consciousness linked with the Millennium Falcon, specifically a piloting droid, with what's established as the most robust navigational knowledge in the galaxy. It's only after this point that we see Han Solo actually perform impressive piloting maneuvers.
Except literally in the movie earlier, I would say all things considered, this is impressive.
And you'll notice it's only ever in the Millennium Falcon. Don't believe me? Look at this. At the end of Solo, we see Han finally pull off his signature thread the needle maneuver. It bookends his failure with the move earlier on in the movie with the hover cars and is meant to show the growth of his skills, right? He then goes on to do it twice more throughout the series. First in The Empire Strikes Back while he navigates the asteroid, and then again, even more famously, to escape the cave.
No cave.
But here's the thing, it's not him pulling off those maneuvers, it's L3.
Okay, let's get into this. This is the meat and potatoes of why I really want to do this video. L337 is robust, of course, 100%. But also, she's like every single other astromech droid alive. She's literally part astromech droid. She does the exact same thing as R2-D2 does and BB-8 does, The main job is navigation, so they can plot out hyperspace routes for you. So that's L-37's job. She's basically a GPS. This is the equivalent of saying NASCAR driver Joe Logano isn't good at driving because he used GPS to find his local McDonald's. Or the fact they literally have someone who's the equivalent to L-37 as a spotter telling them where to go. L-337's job is literally plotting hyperspace jumps, as well as every single astromech. She's good at charting out spots because, I don't know, it's hard enough for people to get around roads. Imagine trying to do that in space where everything's literally black and stars. You have no idea where she's going. These droids are assistants, MatPat, not too dissimilar to you having another writer on this video, or editors. Just because you have aid doesn't stop you from being the head of game theory, doesn't stop you from being the face of game theory, like Han Solo is the face of the Millennium Falcon. He does some of the work to most of the work, just like you can do most of the work, but that doesn't mean that you do not have help. L-337 helps Han with the Millennium Falcon, like how Team Theorists helps you, MatPat, with your theory channels, because I find it hard to believe you will be able to run 4 channels by yourself, just like Han Solo would be kind of hard to run the Millennium Falcon just by himself. Especially in the shape it is in by time of the original trilogy. Plus, plotting out his own hyperspace jumps. Moving on, you make it absolute so that since you have a navigator, you are not a pilot. That's completely untrue, but let's take this line of thinking real quick, just so we can explore how far we can go. By this logic, Anakin Skywalker didn't do a single thing in the Battle of Naboo. Neither did any of these pilots on the Death Star trench run. Anakin did not do anything besides just shoot the reactor, or really anything in any of the battles, not in the Battle of Coruscant, or literally anything, because R2 made all the decisions because R2 is the navigator. None of the Jedis or any of the pilots in Star Wars with the astromech droid literally did nothing. You and I know that there is nothing farther from the truth. Anakin did all these acts, as well as all these pilots did all these acts with the assistance of their astromech droids, basically helping them with general navigation. Like, come on, this isn't uncommon knowledge. Granted, we do not know the percentage of what Anakin's doing versus what R2, but I think when we're seeing them fly at the beginning in this pattern, we can say that this is the astromechs helping. But for the rest, it's literally Anakin and R2 saying, the invisible hand is right here. I'm gonna help you correct yourself while you're doing this flip. That's basically what R2's doing. That's what I assume. But I would say backed up with knowledge in the books and all that, or just looking at the eye test, that is what R2's doing. Same with Han. I have to give him credit for doing the Kessel Run. In terms of where they go, their location to get to this planet, that's L3. Can we accept that? I would say it's 99% Han Solo, at 1% hyperspace jump, and where they're going, I'll give it to L3. But that's also like saying Joey Logano isn't really driving his car, it's really his spotter. Like, come on.
It's L3. We know this not because we see him being a terrible pilot later, but because we see plenty of other characters who are definitely not pilots suddenly becoming amazing at flying as soon as you put them at the helm of the Millennium Falcon. In Return of the Jedi, a film in which Han never pilots the Falcon on screen, Lando gets a hold of the Falcon and pulls off multiple close maneuvers, including the same thread-the-needle move getting through the core of the second Death Star. And in case you think that Lando might have perfected the move in the time that he owned the ship, how about someone who has never flown before, period? When Rey flies the Falcon for the first time in her life, she manages to pull off the same exact move.
Like I said, I'll give credit to both pilot and droid, but we're not going to act like Rey and Lando aren't already pilots. Rey is force sensitive, and it's a pretty consistent thing in Star Wars that force sensitivity is connected with being a great pilot. That's been a thing in Star Wars for years. I mean, Anakin's never flown before in his life, and he just showed the Luker Hulk. And before we get to the arguments about, oh, Anakin flew his pod racer, I would wager to say that Rey rode her speeder, made out pod racer parts, more than Anakin rode his pod racer, which she only used during big races that only probably happen once every few months. But they're both force sensitive, and also it's Star Wars, so you have to have the correct story. So they're both going to be good at flying because that's a general consistency with, being force sensitive. It coincides with great flying. Also, MatPat makes it seem like L-37 and the rest of the astromechs, because L-3 is just a walking mech, are the autopilots, but they're not. We know that they're two different things by the fact Anakin turns off autopilot when he's going to space in Naboo.
R2, get us off this autopilot. It's gonna get us both killed.
But R2's still functioning just fine. Put the ship in autopilot. They're two different things. Yes, droids can fly the ships, and they're still droids, so they control it similar to how a droids would, but it's not autopilot. So they're two different systems. So when the Millennium Falcon's flying in autopilot, this isn't L3 flying, it's just the autopilot.
Again, a few weeks later on Crate, she does it one more time for good measure. And we know it can't be Rey's parents passing on good piloting skills since, you know,
they're filthy junk traders.
With Anakin with no flying descendants whatsoever, so that's such a dumb argument to bring up her descendants not being able to fly, even at the time. I mean, at least we see them flying, dropping her off on Jakku. We don't even know who Anakin's relative is besides Shmi, and Shmi's never flown anything. And even if you want to do that dumb theory that Palpatine's basically Anakin's dad, well, that means that Rey's also a good pilot if you believe in that theory. So, debunked?
Long story short, the common thread through all of this, it's not the pilot skills, it's the ship. The ship with L-337, the most advanced piloting droid in the galaxy built into its system. Rey may not realize how much the Falcon is actually helping her out, but Han certainly knows. Have you ever stopped to notice how Han is rarely the person flying when the ship is under attack? In Episode 4, he actively gives up piloting to Chewie so he could have more fun, be more helpful by hopping into one of the turrets.
No, Pat, he was being helpful. You know what? Instead of you doing all this important stuff like raising money for St. Jude or managing your team, also being a husband, instead of doing all that, write all your scripts, edit all your videos, make the thumbnails, brand deals, all that. It's dumb? Yeah, I know.
Han nor Chewie are in the cockpit when the Falcon is actively under Imperial fire.
Han, get up here!
But the ship somehow manages to come out unscathed.
At the beginning, he was flying, then the ship got damaged. But yeah, I'll give some credit to L337.
And how about all those times that Han talks about his evasive maneuvers?
Besides, I know a few maneuvers, we'll lose them.
Yeah, flying in a straight line. Real evasive there, Han.
He actually flown the ship when they were being attacked by the TIE Fighter when they're entering the Alderaan system. Also, countless times throughout the comics, and also countless times throughout the movies, Han flew the Millennium Falcon when they're in fights.
He does this while the navigational system, i.e. L3, is busy charting a hyperspace route.
We'll be safe enough once we make the jump to hyperspace.
Let's face it, his name should be Han Didn't Do It Solo. Honestly, considering the origin of his name in Solo, wouldn't be much dumber.
No, obviously you need to be a good pilot to do the stuff that he does. Flying is much more than just, pointing where to go and, going point to point. You see in the Bad Batch episode that landing is very hard to do, so is takeoff. Like, flying in Star Wars isn't easy, and it's never been shown to be easy.
Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, I'm sorry to dash your dreams of hunky Han, the great star pilot. But hey, if you have your heart set on becoming a great pilot like Han Solo when you grow up, now you know that even without stepping foot in a cockpit, you've probably already hit the benchmark, since let's face it, the bar is pretty darn low. The only question this theory leaves me with is one I'm gonna leave you with now too. Did the filmmakers know? I hate to say it, but this theory is backed up with a lot of evidence across the movies.
It's not, though. A simple bit of looking further or, watching the movies, this theory is completely busted. I'm surprised more people did not use this in their dumb Disney is destroying Star Wars argument.
So much so that I would actually speculate that the makers of Solo may have known what they were doing here. Think about it. The whole movie plays up this idea that L3 is a liberated droid. She's a cocky pilot, she's too good for Lando's advances, and she takes it upon herself to liberate all droids in the Star Wars universe. And then she ends up literally buried in the wiring of the Millennium Falcon. In the meantime, Han Solo, a human who never accomplishes anything without her help, gets all of the credit for her work, spending the next 3 movies bragging about all his amazing flying abilities. Did Lucas and Disney intend to show how incredibly unfair the situation is?
Yeah, they did intend this. Look, L3 is an Easter egg, and her entire existence pertains to this line in Empire Strikes Back.
Sir, I don't know where your ship learned to communicate, but it has the most peculiar dialect.
That strange line of dialogue is L337. That's the point of her existence in this entire movie. It's just a not even an Easter egg. It's like such a small detail that got a massive role in the entire backstory. And when this video came out, that dot hadn't been connected yet until later on. But yeah, the filmmakers 100% intended for L337 to be that person that Han talks to. But what they didn't intend is people to make these wild theories that she's the reason why Han Solo is good. That wasn't the intention whatsoever. Like, I don't know why people are even trying to theorize that in the comment section. Overall, I think this video embodies what people don't like about the theory videos. They take a little small Easter egg or a little fun connection and they spin it off into this one big large theory that really pertains on nothing because it lampshades all the true stuff that really debunks this video. Which, sometimes the theories works in some universes, but when it comes to universes like Star Wars or Marvel or DC or literally any universe that has some bit of lore to it, most of these theories just fall apart. I feel like there's only like 2 good Star Wars theories that he has made that are out there. Few ones that are good are made by Austin, and this one Force Ghost video, which is how I interpret Force Ghost myself and how most people interpret them. So I feel like that is the one good video that Matt's team did, but the other good ones are from Austin most of the time. Still, I love his theories though, and his theory channels. I like to see a different side of Star Wars, of how people interpret different things in Star Wars, from like just this extremely hardcore book reader nerds, from people who are more casually in-depth in Star Wars. I thought it would be interesting to break down the theory and all of its flaws, and it's really just a nerd calling out another nerd. What else is new in the internet space? Speaking of, one of the biggest arguments in Star Wars right now is the sequel trilogy. And a good show that helps bridge the gaps for people in the sequel trilogy, and which got me into watching it, is Star Wars Resistance. Now go watch Star Wars Resistance.